Planning Committee to order at 5:23 p.m. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Then we move on to our only course of business, which is the selection of community members. And I will do this in the same fashion that we did for policy, which is ask for anyone who would like to comment on people that they would like to see nominated for the committee to express their reasons for, and then we'll take nominations. But before we do that, I would like to invite Blake as last year's facilities chair to be able to give us some insight because our two previous members that served us last year also applied for this year. And so I thought Blake was best suited to provide insight on that. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Andy and Kristen reapplied. They had reached out and asked about reapplying when it got first published out there before I could even reach out to them and give them that information. So they were already eager to be a part of it and continue doing that work. The other piece of it that I think they have some really strong assets is that when they first got on the board or on the committee last year, Randy and I met with them and we talked through some things and giving them some historical background about the committee, things that the committee had been working on, looking forward to the future. And they both expressed a deep interest and an excitement of really thinking about where that new 10-year plan is going to be going. And also, I don't know how, I think they both have had some experience, exposure to this. I think Andy a little bit more, but the work that MU has been doing over the last probably almost decade, where they have been doing their facility audits and really going into that. She hasn't, I don't think Andy's like deeply involved into that, but she's aware of it and like aware of those that have been. And so having that exposure and that experience in those conversations and also just what they brought to the table this past year, I think it would be really lucrative for this committee to bring them back. And so I appreciate the chance to just share that insight and share that perspective of the two of them. And obviously, I'm not on this committee. I don't have a vote this year, so it is in y'all's hand. But I guarantee you, if y'all were to pick them, they will continue doing really great work.
Well, I appreciate you coming, and I felt that you were the best one to talk about that and the experience from last year. So I appreciate you coming in and giving us that insight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, along with Blake, thanks for commenting on that. I would like to consider Andy and Christine to stay on the committee. During my transition, I had conversations with them, and they really understand and know this work, and so I think they will be a great valued asset to this committee.
Yes, Jean.
So I was not on the committee last year. I will say I know from being on the committees there can be a learning curve, so I definitely appreciate community members that want to stay on an additional years after they have that background and everything else. I appreciate that deeply. And that said, I think there are some other folks that apply that have some really some skills and knowledge that I think would be really beneficial to have on the committee. And so in trying to balance those two things, and in part I think of the two that had previously been on, because of Andy's position and the fact that probably is thinking just as part of her job about a little bit of like accessibility as that relates to buildings and some of the safety concerns and things like that. I would potentially recommend Andy, and then I think that two others that stuck out to me were Christian Jones and Darren Ratterman. Darren Ratterman has a lot of experience with planning and zoning, building inspections, building experience. When we're talking about trying to figure out what maybe needs to be prioritized for repairs, for thinking about contractors, what we have the ability to do in-house versus out-of-house, being a thought partner on that sort of thing. That experience to me really, really stood out as something that would be super valuable. And Christian Jones, both in his role in terms of like as experience as a chief operating officer for a different organization, and so being familiar with sort of all of that oversight and things there as well. That was an experience that really stood out to me as potentially being really important in thinking about how we're building our long-range plan and stuff. And so I would say those are sort of, I realize we can only nominate two, but those are the three that, thinking about both experience from previously being on the committee that Andy has, and then the two others in terms of the experience they would be bringing new to the committee.
Alvin or Dr. Yearwood, do you have anything at all that you want to add about anybody? You don't have to. I mean, just,
I don't.
you know, okay.
So I just want to clarify, so we're looking at Andy Hayes, and the other nomination is Kristen Eastman?
Well, we haven't made a nomination yet,
I mean-
but those were the two, I mean,
Those
I
were
have,
previously on.
Okay.
yeah, they were
okay.
previously on there.
Okay, yeah, that's what I want to clarify, because there was another Christian that was a little confusing there, but.
There's a Christian
Christian
Jones,
yeah,
and then there's a Kristen Eastman.
Yes, that's what I wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
yep.
All right, okay.
Sorry, I just said first
Yeah,
name. She-
yeah.
So I questioned even speaking about this because it feels weird to me. I was looking at this from the perspective of looking for people that kind of bring a different perspective, a parent, a teacher, someone that's on that, what I call user realm, right? And so, you know, we have wonderful skills in Mr. Ofield with his background and with Heather with finance. And then we look at it from the board perspective when we talk about directives and priorities and things like that. So I was looking at it from parent perspective, and so Andy and Kristen, having been on the committee last year, also bring that perspective. But I wanted to throw out Lisa Boyer, who I do know and have a personal relationship with. But the reasons are because of her extensive history. Her mother was actually the director of the Career Center and retired from there. She's got 5 children, or she's had 5 children in CPS. She retired from CPS as a teacher and a counselor. She's been a highly active member in the schools and has actually worked with the facilities directors in the buildings for either advocating or for kind of trying to think outside the box on where a resource could come from or how a parent group could help. And so I think she can bring a completely different perspective as far as from a former teacher being in the buildings, and then from the parent as far as things that go on specifically in the buildings. However, long-range planning also includes a lot of other things, you know, buildings, you know, maybe IT, maybe whatever. And so those are all good experiences to have as well. So that's just all I wanted to say.
And just FYI, I don't know that anyone else said this, but Kristen actually used to be an
Yes, she
educator.
did. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for mentioning that. She used to teach elementary school, and she's got 4 kids in CPS as well. And Andy has kids in CPS too. Yeah, so she brings also that user perspective, I call it. Heather, I'm sorry. Do you have anything else?
No, just, I was also gonna say about Andy too, because she's an attorney too, so she has kind of a different perspective with
Yeah.
the ADA and stuff that she can bring to, and Title IX experience that she can bring to the facilities as well. But all the other ones that I had marked, everyone else already mentioned, so.
Can you remind me a little bit, what does Title IX deal with? Is that ADA kinds of things? Or-
Discrimination, those
Okay.
factors of.
Paul, you
Paul, you wanna,
wanna,
Title IX's discrimination in sex and educational
Yeah.
programs
Specifically related to sex
and
Yeah.
educational programs.
and educational
And
programs?
But it also,
Okay.
it also has to do with access.
X.
yes.
Okay.
So
That's-
when you're thinking about like the facility.
Accessible
and stuff,
buildings,
and
yes.
stuff, it also can fall under that, especially if some place doesn't have like separate
Yes.
ADA lawyers or things like that.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it
And-
sort of gets wrapped in.
It's something that we are very conscious about. We're doing trainings coming up when tomorrow.
Right,
And so on, because it's something that district-wide we must all be engaged with.
Right. And having accessible spaces is really important, so having someone with that experience is important as well. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call for nominations. I think Jean has one.
Sure, I would nominate Andy Hayes.
Second. All in favor of Andy Hayes, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Oh, there's no opposed. Please forgive me, this is my first meeting I'm conducting. Okay, so Andy. And so nominations for the second volunteer.
Before
Yes.
we get to that, can
Yes.
I just ask, and maybe some of this is for folks who were on it before, or even if it's acceptable with you, if Blake has
Yeah.
thoughts as well, because it feels like there's sort of two competing pieces, which is like, first of all, to recognize the really great work that it sounds like Kristen did last year, like not trying to discount that, but also that myself, you, or others like who have sort of mentioned folks that have different types of experiences, and so I guess I'm just thinking for myself, like trying to balance which serves the committee better, and so before there are
Right.
nominations, wondering if that is something, I mean, people can have different opinions, but it feels like that potentially creates a tension when we get to the nominations, and so before like people get nominated and everyone just gets not accepted because people are thinking about it differently, just trying to
No,
get a
I agree
sense
with
of
you.
where folks are or what we're looking at in terms of like what the work is going to be for the next year or two, what would be most helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You know, it's rock in a hard place to a certain extent. So anybody else have thoughts or feelings on that? There's something to be said for continuity.
Yeah.
I mean,
As I'm thinking, new to and during this transition, stability really kind of helps in this work because it's a lot that's going to be done, and they have that history and they've been through the process. So I think the transition would be much smoother as we go into this work, and with other community members. I mean, they're invited to the meeting, so to learn more. Then, as we have this. When we ask for new community members, maybe we can reconsider.
and there's certainly
Them as well.
nothing stopping a community member
Right.
from reaching out to any of us on the committee to say, hey, you guys were discussing this. I have 2 cents to provide to you so that we can, maybe take, we might not be thinking of something at all and we get a different perspective. And we welcome all that kind of input.
And I have to add, because of the strong interest that we've seen, hopefully
Yes.
we should be engaging in more dialogue, which I think is better for us as we move
Absolutely.
forward,
Absolutely. So,
Only other thing I was gonna add is also, since, I feel like there is some continuity that's important, but it is, if we're going to keep in the policy that we're going to do this every year, that doesn't like discount anyone from reapplying if someone's kids like are then out of the system in a year or two, and someone else might give someone else an opening or in a position to do it again next year too. So it's not like the terms are so long that it wouldn't be able to like continue to have interest in future years.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why we vote on this every year, because, you know, somebody may decide that they don't want to continue. We may decide we want to take a different, direction. Any of the committees might, so absolutely. I would encourage people to continue to volunteer. So do I have a nomination for our second community member? And anyone can nominate.
I would like to nominate Christine Eastman.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's you,
I would too,
you aye
yes.
too?
Yes.
Okay, so that is unanimous. And so for next year, we will have Andy Hayes and Christine Eastman will continue working with us. And that's very exciting. Yes.
Madam Chair, are we gonna send communications to all of the volunteers?
Yes.
Okay.
Blake is actually going to head that up for all the committees, which will be great. And Blake, I don't know if you could do this, but would it be possible to the ones that have been selected to just include the meeting dates?
Yeah, I did that last time.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved?
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.